And I want to first bring you our war reporters from the ground. Remember, India Today's coverage of this war over 29 days has been on the shoulders and the strength of true war reporters. Rajesh Pawar, who's been at the heart of the action throughout in Kyiv, Gaurav Sawant, who's been in Ukraine. He's currently in Warsaw, where Joe Biden will be headed after the big NATO summit. Gaurav, coming to you first for a very quick update. NATO summit currently on. Big words from Zelensky at the NATO summit, Gaurav, where he says the results of what's happening in these deliberations will dictate who is Ukraine's friend and who is betrayed that country. Very, very, he's almost put NATO on notice, Gaurav.
Shiv, you're absolutely right. President Zelensky is very upset. He's very upset because he now realizes day 29 into this battle, he can hold on thus far and no further. And he sees NATO appears to be dithering while they're promising all weapons and systems and arms, and even Germany is now providing the Strela missiles. He has a steady supply of other weapon systems, including Javelin anti-tank guided missiles, which have, like the Bayraktar UCAVs, been a game changer, but game changer for 29 days and counting. But how long can he sustain this fight against a relentless Russian attack where practically half his country, the coastal region is gone. Even the European Union has said that wheat supplies to 3 million displaced people cannot be made because Russia is blockading the Black Sea. So he realizes the ground realities. You hear a lot of propaganda. You hear about how very strongly Ukraine is fighting back. But what's the situation on ground? Defenses are now being limited to around the region of Kyiv to protect Kyiv from the Russian assault. Missile batteries, missile strikes are relentless. And now the Russians are digging in their trenches around Kyiv for the long siege. And 3 million people displaced, 2 million plus here in Ukraine. In fact, here in Poland, Shiv, we are on our way to one of the biggest refugee camps here. And we are told that President Biden may visit one of these humanitarian assistance camps. Now, this is the real tragedy of the war, which is only set to escalate. And NATO is discussing countermeasures. These talks may happen for long, but how long can Ukraine sustain this? And that's why he says you're either with us or against us, just paying lip service, Shiv.
And, and time is running out. It's been 1 month. Rajesh, both as a war reporter in Ukraine and also as a resident of Ukraine, how are you seeing what comes out of this NATO summit, Rajesh? Because there's a great deal of symbolism, no shortage of symbolism, but the people of Ukraine, the leadership of Ukraine, as Zelensky has said, are looking for some kind of concrete action.
Look, Shiv, firstly, I'm not a resident of Ukraine. I just happened to be here when the war started. I was here for a few months before that. Secondly, when it comes to the war here, all eyes on Brussels right now. Everything, what will happen in coming days in Ukraine, in this war, will depend on what will be decided in this NATO summit now, which is underway. As far as G7 and EU summits are concerned, they'll decide just on more sanctions, which has not much meaning as far as the current war is concerned. Right now, there is lull in the battle. It has been so for last 5 to 6 days. Ground offensive from Russian forces have been very limited. A few counterattacks by Ukraine forces, but by and large, things on ground have remained as status quo what it was 6 days back. Though pounding from the air, from rockets, artillery, and rocket launchers firing from both sides have continued all this war. Everything hinges on what these leaders at NATO, President Biden and the NATO leaders decide today. If they decide to be more aggressive, plans to give more weapons, more lethal technologies to Ukraine, this war will escalate to a totally different new level. And if they have more reconciliatory approach, then probably we will see the status quo continuing for a few more days before the final talks happen between the representatives of Russia and Ukraine. Shiv.
Geeta is live with us from Moscow as well. Geeta, Russia has made it very clear. No ambiguity when they say that any further action, as it were, by NATO will be seen as an act of war. They've already, pronounced that what NATO is currently doing by sending all those arms into Ukraine, is a belligerent move by the NATO nations. Things are on a hair trigger 1 month in. This NATO summit the sense is it's going to be a lot of symbolism, but nothing substantively might actually change. Nobody's expecting that the NATO countries are going to get directly involved in this. It's more of a kind of Western assurance for the countries surrounding Ukraine. How is it being looked at from Moscow?
Well, a lot of people over here saying these are optics, posturing for sure. Shiv, the fact that NATO has been saying that they're going to secure borders of the Eastern European NATO allies and member states. But nothing beyond that. We've seen battle groups after battle groups being sent in to Poland, to Latvia, Lithuania, but not a single boot on the ground in Ukraine, because that certainly is a red line Moscow has drawn. And if NATO or the West go beyond that red line, that could escalate into a war. And like Moscow said, a third world war, should there be one, would be nuclear, Shiv. So it is a very difficult position for the West more than Moscow. How difficult is it in Moscow? I have two gentlemen with me, Indians who live here or work here. Dr. Vikas, who's based out of India now, but has studied and lived in Russia for many years, and Dr. Rameshwar Singh. Dr. Vikas, if I could come to you, how difficult is life in Moscow with the sanctions? Because we do know that you all have known how to live with sanctions.
So I would say there's not much of a difference, although there is a difference in that price hike is there for certain things. I won't say for everything, but yes, price hikes are there. But still, for the people staying out here in Moscow or in Russia, life is absolutely normal as it used to be earlier. But only thing what they see is that prices are slowly going up, but I would personally say that there is absolutely no panic within the people, and they are living absolutely a normal life.
And about the Russian action, how do you perceive your friends, the Russians over here, Indian community, look at the Russian action in Ukraine?
Well, Indian community, basically, they are more into it. They support it in the sense that they believe that whatever it is there, that is the decision of the Russian government, and generally they support all this.
Generally they support because they live here in Russia, a very sensitive matter, sensitive issue, Shiv. But when it comes to life, there has been no critical disruption. But yes, we have been reporting on price rise and inflation. There has been certain amount of price rise on basic goods and essential supplies.
Okay. Things have sort of calmed down a little bit. There's a little bit of a military lull as far as the operations in Ukraine are concerned. By no means does that mean, that the violence has stopped. In fact, in certain pockets, Russia has taken a great deal of damage, as has Ukraine. A Russian warship was bombed, in the Berdyansk port of the Black Sea as well. So here are 5 signs. We've put together a report to suggest, collating the views of experts as well, that a month into this entire conflict, here are 5 signs and symbols that Putin is all set to not calm down, but actually intensify and escalate the invasion of Ukraine. Take a look at this report, and then we're going to go back to our reporters.
A lightning invasion has dragged out into a grinding war. With Putin's giant military convoys crippled by logistics, Ukrainian cities ruined but still standing, and Russia in the death grip of global sanctions. Fears are rising that Putin has been pressured so much that he may actually climb the escalation ladder. On the ground, there are already signs that a tireless Putin is not prepared to dial things down, but rather intensify his operation. Consider the following from just the last 4 days. Proof 1. Nuclear forces on alert. For starters, Team Putin's language is now fully nuclear, brandishing the possible use of nuclear weapons as if they were conventional and raising temperatures to the maximum. It doesn't help that Putin has already put his nuclear arsenal on operational alert. Proof 2. Nuclear-capable weapons. Russia has debuted its long-range Kinzhal nuclear-capable air-launched strike weapon against Ukrainian targets. This was the first use of the weapon in combat, and it signals a definite escalation in the strength being brought to the battlefield. Proof number 3. Long-range weapons. The Russian Defense Ministry is in overdrive, putting out videos of long-range strikes on strategic assets of Ukraine, including this missile launch claimed to have destroyed a Ukrainian weapons depot in the western city of Ravine. Also signaling that the western part of the country, which shares borders with NATO nations, isn't off limits to Russian strikes. Proof 4. Creating case for more damage. Over the last week, Russia has been building a case for greater damage, but pointing out on a daily basis that Ukraine has been using civilian areas for military operations, like this drone video of a Ukrainian shopping center being used to reload missiles and rockets during a firing exchange.
I don't think Russia needs to defend anything at this point. I mean, we have our own, again, national security interests. Mind you, doing what no NATO member has ever done, protecting the civilian population inside that same country, that was a threat to our national security interests.
Proof number 5. NATO arms flooding Ukraine. The fifth indicator is that delaying an escalation would mean Ukraine gets even better armed with NATO weapons. The country is already awash with new generation anti-tank and anti-air weaponry, and much more is clearly inbound, as India Today's Gaurav Sawant personally witnessed in this world-exclusive report.
Are these American troops here as part of a North Atlantic Treaty Organization country NATO military exercise? They started coming here. The initial troops or the pioneers came in between mid to end February, and the larger number of troops are still coming in.
Putin is under pressure, and with each passing hour, that pressure to act is spiraling. For a month, the world has held its breath, and it's holding its breath even harder now. With Geeta Mohan in Moscow and Gaurav Sawant in Warsaw, Bureau Report, India Today.
And let's ask our reporters what they think of this. 29 days in, with the pressure building for some kind of a takeaway, some kind of a result, are things set to intensify? Rajesh, you're reporting a lull there in Kyiv, but there has been damage continuing in other parts of Ukraine. We've seen what's happened with that Russian warship yesterday. Different places seeing, different levels of damage. That's continuing as well. Do you see this lull opening up into an intensification or an escalation, Rajesh?
Look, Shiv, it is not just around Kyiv, and these are not reports which I have just got from local sources. Yeah. I'm also quoting from what Pentagon, the reports have put in about the battle going on, the war going on in Ukraine right now. There has been a lull in the sense there has been no major ground offensive carried out by the Russian troops anywhere in Ukraine, except for minor operations in Donetsk and in Lugansk area. This port you're talking about on the Black Sea, which has been bombed by the Russians, and their report by Ukrainian sources that they have destroyed a warship of Russia. Let me tell you, entire navy of Ukraine has been decimated by the Russians. They have been put out of operation, and the Ukrainian navy is right now almost zilch. They have no presence in the Azov Sea or in the Black Sea, and Russian army totally dominates entire Black Sea and the Sea of Azov. And they've cut off any kind of import, export, or any material coming inside from Ukraine from sea route totally. And it's not now, it's for a week now, because they want to ensure that anything which comes to the land route from Poland, and they're keeping an eye on that. Shiv.
Very interesting. Gaurav, what do you think? Is there likely to be an escalation? As Rajesh points out, even though this has become a kind of grinding war, Russia does has established a degree of control in the eastern and southern parts of Ukraine. There are some pockets of influence in the north as well. Are you hearing, what are you hearing, that could there be, a storm after this particular lull?
Shiv, Russia is tiring out President Zelensky and Ukraine. How is Russia operating at this point of time? Listen to the frustration in President Zelensky's voice when he says that NATO has to offer more than just lip service and sympathy. And after this round of talks in NATO, they'll know who's with them and who's against them. What does this indicate? This indicates that while they're getting material support, they're getting their Strela missiles, they're getting their javelins, they're getting their stingers, but they need much more to be able to withstand a Russian attack, which doesn't clearly seem to be happening at this point of time. What is it that President Zelensky is demanding? He's demanding boots on ground. He's demanding peacekeepers. He's demanding a declaration of a no-fly zone. None of that is happening, and none of that will happen. White House already is indicating that this visit of President Biden is more about humanitarian assistance that is being given to Poland and to Ukraine, to these 3 million internally and externally displaced people. So that is an indication that monetary help, yes, humanitarian assistance, yes, military hardware to an extent, yes, but beyond that, what happens? Beyond that, it's for Ukraine to see how long can they sustain this fight, even though some more weapon systems may be given to them. On the other hand, Poland is very apprehensive, and as are some of the Baltic republics, that if Russia is unchecked now, they could well be next in the line of fire, and that is why they want additional American boots on ground in this region, which is NATO territory, but Russia could be eyeing it in the years ahead.
Geeta, in Russia, the country, no matter what anyone says, this is a much larger country with far greater resources. Yes, they've had some major military setbacks, within Ukraine. They've lost a lot of people. They've lost a lot of soldiers. Their convoys have been, bogged down. But most analysts believe that Russia has a unmatched appetite to actually absorb this kind of damage. And there may be, something to the fact that Putin is trying to wear out both Zelensky and the West before meeting those political and military objectives.
Well, Shiv, absolutely. One, Russia has not used its entire power. The forces, the tanks that have been used are not the latest. And air power. Russia has not used its air power to its full capacity and force. That just goes to show that in a certain way, what Moscow has been relaying and telling the world, that they do not really want to carpet bomb Ukraine and cause a lot of loss of lives is in many ways than one true, because this is a conventional war. In the beginning, it certainly was, Shiv, with unconventional methods. And what was unconventional about this unconventional war was that Russia was announcing exactly where they were going to bomb. They have now, in the later stages, bombed residential areas as well, but many of the buildings were evacuated. I am not saying or justifying any action by Russia, the loss of lives is something that Russia will be held accountable. But this is in many ways than one, Shiv, Russia messaging to Ukraine that if they continue with their policies, if they do not come to the negotiating table and agree to the terms and conditions, then this will continue. There is going to be no ceasefire. And yes, Ukraine is tired of the war, and so is the West, because they have no other option. What are the options? They're not sending troops to Ukraine, and they're only guarding and strengthening their forces in the NATO member states.
Geeta, Gaurav, Rajesh, thank you very much for joining me on that story. 29 days in, no one any the wiser on how and when this conflict is going to end. The damage continues non-stop at this time in Ukraine. Russia, meanwhile, while this NATO summit has been on in Brussels, Russia has released a hair-raising video, and I'm going to play out the whole thing for you, of a strike on a shopping center in the capital city of Kyiv a few days ago. The Kyiv shopping center was attacked late Sunday, killing at least 8 people and leaving dozens injured. But that's not the reason why Russia has put out this video. They've basically put out this video to show, at least what they say, that Ukrainian military has been using the shopping center and such civilian and commercial establishments as ammunition depots to actually store rockets and to reload their military ordnance. Moscow claims that it has been able to use high-precision, long-range weapons to strike at such targets. The video released by Russia shows tracking and live monitoring of a rocket vehicle and then targeting it after entering into a shopping mall. Videos like this being used by Russia to suggest that Ukraine is increasingly using civilian areas to target Russian positions. Well, remember, India Today has the biggest team of reporters covering this war from the day it started late in February, from Kyiv to Kharkiv, from Moscow to Warsaw, the second largest city of Ukraine. Kharkiv is now a city in ruins. Remember, a month of war has changed every single cityscape in Ukraine, especially in Kyiv. India Today continues to be the only Indian channel that's been reporting non-stop from day 1 to day 29 today. Rajesh Pawar, among the first reporters to reach Kyiv, he was there even before the war started, as this invasion began. He's reported from different parts of the country, including inside Kyiv, where he still reports from here.